Keep your senses. Be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking to devour someone. Keep your senses. Be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking to devour someone.
Yes, yes, yes. Another episode where I'm going to expose the lies that Lion Ryan has with my encounter with him. Now, he accuses the New World Translation taking out and adding words to fit the Jehovah Witness doctrine. But in reality, it's just pure ignorance and naive on his part. He doesn't educate himself on how Bible translation works. But one specific text that the New World Translation proves to be more accurate and superior is Genesis chapter 17, verse 14, which reads, If any uncircumcised male would not circumcise the flesh of his foreskin, that person or soul must be cut off or put to death. From his people, he has broken my covenant. Now, his Bible preference is the ESV, the English Standard Version, which is a fine translation, but nothing compared to the New World Translation. The NWT is far more superior and accurate than the ESV. I bet Lion Ryan has never compared the NWT with the biblical languages, and he never researched why the NWT translates some passages differently from mainstream Bibles. He just concludes, like many people, the Watchtower changed the text. But just because it's different, it doesn't make it inaccurate. But back to Genesis chapter 17, verse 14. I asked him a question about how it's rendered in the ESV compared to the Hebrew, and you'll see how he lies.
But
Okay, what was the scripture we looked up?
yeah, Genesis chapter 17, verse 14.
14. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. That's what you want me to read?
hmm So when it says that be cut off from his people, does that mean to kill him off?
Separated.
Separated but not cut off? Like kill him?
What are you going to cut off? Kind of like you guys do with shunning. You cut them off from the community, from the congregation.
Well, this is actually, no, we're cutting them off means to kill them.
What is he? He's a mobster. He's a,
Now listen to the mockery of Ray J. Laughing if this isn't an alternative way to interpret this text, which in reality is the most accurate and consistent. But I just want to bring up a few Bibles in their commentary on what they say. For example, the Dewey version: the male whose flesh of his foreskin should not be circumcised, that soul shall be destroyed out of his people, because he hath broken my covenant. Does that sound like a shunning to you, Rage Day or Lion Ryan? But let's continue. I just want to hurry up and get this finished. I'm trying to be concise as possible. This is the International Standard Version. Any uncircumcised male who does not have the foreskin of his flesh circumcised on the eighth day after his birth is to be eliminated from his people, because he has broken my covenant. In the Wycliffe Bible also renders this: any man whose flesh of his rod should not be circumcised, that man shall be done away from his people. For he made void my covenant, for he hath broken my covenant. And I want to bring up the Tanakh with Rashi. This is the way how he translates it and with his notes. And an uncircumcised male who would not circumcise the flesh of his foreskin, that soul will be cut off from its people. He has broken my covenant. And this is his notes here. And an uncircumcised male, here scripture teaches that circumcision is in the place that distinguishes between male and female. Who will not circumcise? When he reaches the age when he becomes liable for punishment, then his soul will be cut off. But his father who does not circumcise him is not punishable by karith, spiritual excision, but is guilty of transgressing a positive commandment. Here, the soul will be cut off. He goes childless and dies prematurely. Do you hear that, Rage J? Hee 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 hee. And also, let me bring up J.H. Hertz. This is a Hebrew scholar with his translation. And the uncircumcised male who was not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that so shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. And I look at what he says. Cut off from his people, either through punishment at the hands of God, which is my position, or through expulsion from the community, which is Ryan's position, which I would grant, but through context and through language, my position is more favorable, as I'll show you later on in the video. But one more other translation, which reads this: an uncircumcised male who does not circumcise his foreskin before he reaches legal maturity, that soul will be cut off from his people. He will die prematurely and childless, for he has breached my covenant. But even scholarship, such as this book right here, by Richard C. Steiner, with this book, disembodied souls, the Nephish in Israel, and kindred spirits in the ancient Near East, with an appendix of the Kalamuha inscription, the book gives lists of scholars that gives the idea that Vinish Reta shall be cut off. It gives the idea that this is referring to death, whether it's immediate or not. But it's not if it's not if it's not immediate, then that also means that it's the person who died is not favored by God and not given the chance to be resurrected. Either way, omitting the fish, the soul, from the ESV shows the doctrine that the soul doesn't die in this verse, whether it's immediate or during judgment. So as Rage J can laugh all he wants, but he's making a fool of himself. He looks foolish.
It sounds like a Scorsese movie. Like get him knocked,
Okay.
get him cut out.
It says every
Listen, my friend, you picked him.
You picked
You
him,
picked him.
Ray,
He's not smart.
Lion
He's a
Ryan.
fool. Now,
That's your boy.
you who found out about it, and 10 million other people out there figured it out.
every male throughout the generations, whether born in your house or brought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring, both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, a everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Why? So why do you think we should kill him?
because he's breaking the commandment of the Mosaic law. Typically, when it says cut off, that basically that phrase, that's what it means. Uh, whatever how you want to refer that to, which you're wrong, that's what it means. It means to kill him off. But here's my point, though. Do you see something wrong with this verse that's missing if you compare it to other Bibles?
No, I can look it up in every translation if
Now listen to his response.
you want.
Well, do the King James.
I hope I'm not gonna play the missing and adding meaning. Don't do that. Please don't do that. So King
Yeah,
James.
that's where we're headed. Yes.
Okay, so King James, so it says, "In the circumcised man, child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, the soul shall be cut off from his people. He have broken my covenant." Oh wow.
Yes. Yes. The whole phrase there, "hanafish," is omitted from that text. Why?
Listen to Ryan how he lies and he makes something up on the spot. Instead of being honest that he doesn't know why Hanafish, the soul, is omitted from the main ESV text, he just makes something up. Watch.
Do the ESV and the KJV use the same manuscripts?
Wow.
I think most people do, as far as the Hebrew text.
No, does the KJV and the ESV use the same manuscripts?
With the Hebrew text, yes. The Masoretic text,
And now, so how is that? So now you gotta look at the context. How does the message change from both translations?
Since his question about where we got the if they use the same Hebrew text, which he didn't know, now he's bringing up something else. He's trying to make the point that moving the phrase, the soul, the person doesn't change the context. Look at him just lying and trying to justify the removal of the phrase.
because it's supporting my view that the soul does die. The ESV is trying to hide that. The ESV removed hanafish when there's no reason to, unless they're trying to hide something.
So
There's no textual differences here. There's no problem here with the Hebrew. All texts have ha nafish, the soul, the flesh, the body.
all of them?
All of them. All Hebrew texts. If there was something different, some textual variation here, it would indicate it here. I don't see any Bible that has a textual variation. They just plainly omitted it.
No, there's a lot of them.
Exactly. So let's view the printed Masoretic text in linear with the ESV, where they got the Old Testament, and see if Hanafish is in the Hebrew manuscripts they used. And here we are. The ESV, this is the main text. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. So here's the Hebrew, and you can read the English. But starting right here. Ve'arel zacher asher lo yamor et baser oralato. Ve'neshirita Hanafish. There it is. Hanafish. Is it in the Hebrew text? Yes. Hahi miyamehar et bariti hefar. There you go. The ESV removed Hanafish from their main English text. Now he asked, did the King James Bible also use the Masoretic text? Well, let's see. This is the King James Bible, chapter 17, verse 14. And the uncircumcised man shall whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, the soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. Let me see where. Chapter 17, verse 14. Is it the same thing? Well, let's read it. Varael Zakar Asher lo yamor et basar orlato venerita hanafish. There it is. Hanafish. It's in every Hebrew manuscript. Let's continue.
And they say that doesn't say the soul. So so
A
when it says
lot of Hebrew or a lot of English?
the Hebrew one. So when it
Did you hear that? He just lied and said the Hebrew doesn't have Hanafish when clearly it's in the English Bible that omit. Clearly, it's the English Bibles that omit it, which shows the NWT is more accurate. He lied and said some Hebrew manuscripts don't have it. What he's doing here, he's relying on those English Bibles because they remove it. He's assuming that it's also not in the Hebrew. This is my point. He has not done the research. He's answering a question he has no knowledge of. He should have just be humble about it. If I tell him I don't know something about it, I just tell him I don't. I'll research it. Let's continue.
So give me one. Which one doesn't?
um
We have the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have the Aramaic text scrolls.
but the context
I'm gonna
doesn't
go back
change.
real quick. I'm gonna go back. Let's.
We have the Dead Sea Scrolls. Textual variation. They just plainly omitted it.
No, there's a lot of them that say that doesn't say the soul. So so when it says
Lot of Hebrew or a lot of English.
the Hebrew one. So
You heard that, right? Let's move on. I'm trying to get this over with as quick as possible.
when it
So give me one. Which one doesn't?
um
We have the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have the Aramaic text scrolls.
but the context doesn't change. So when it says
It does
Thank you. He just ignored my question. Let's move on.
change because they're hiding something.
so when
The
it says
soul,
shall
the
be
soul
cut
getting
off.
cut off. Say you just don't want to answer the question. Did they remove
Can I
it? Yes or
answer?
no?
Can I answer? So when it says the soul shall be cut off from his people, how is the soul connected to the people?
How is the soul connected to the people?
Because the verse is saying the soul shall be cut off from his people, so it's saying the soul's connected. How's the soul connected?
Because they're Israelites that are under a covenant.
Exactly. So is it literally connected to the person? To the people?
Yes, under a covenant. Yes, in that Hebrew word, karath, means to destroy or consume. Specifically, to covenant, make an alliance, bargain, originally cutting flesh, passing between the pieces, be without, consume, cut down, destroy, destruction,
Mm-hmm.
plainly kill,
Yes.
cut them off. It doesn't appear you know the Mosaic law.
Yeah. So
But
okay.
my
So
whole point, but my whole point is, ESV removed har nefesh from this text, and you can't point out to a Hebrew text that doesn't have it. Doesn't have it.
and you think
Masoretic text,
and you think the ESV is saying a different message?
absolutely. They're trying to hide that the soul could be cut off and be destroyed.
It says he will be cut off from his people. But the thing is, if you're saying cut off means to kill,
To
they both
kill.
say-
Yeah,
they-
it's a typical phrase in Hebrew.
Okay,
To
so
cut off is throughout the Hebrew text. To cut off means to kill them off.
so if you are killed, does your soul die?
Yes,
Okay, so then
we established that in Ecclesiastes, or Ezekiel actually.
okay, so then the King James says the soul shall be cut off. The ESV says he shall be cut off. So that means he's both dying. Both verses he's supposedly dying, and both verses his soul's
He's
being dead. So what? I don't get what the point is. The verse doesn't change the context doesn't change the verse.
wow.
Because the soul you want to believe, as you thought in that video, survives after you die. That's what you said. They're trying to hide that Hanafish can be cut off. The point is they shouldn't have removed it in the first place.
But they tell you they're being cut off. So if someone's being cut off, and you're telling me that means that they're being killed. You
There's
could
a
automatically say that their soul's going to die. So you don't need to say something that's being told that you already know.
Wow. Wow.
Then why did they remove it?
Because if it means the same thing, the context doesn't change. That's a translation.
Lying
Different
through his
translations.
teeth. Oh my
But they
goodness.
omitted it.
No.
Where do you
Yeah.
see Hanafish here? Where do you see soul in this text?
George, I don't think you understand it. When I read the ESV, I still
I'm sorry.
understand
Let's
it.
hear that.
Hanafish,
Let's
Context doesn't change.
let's hear
It's
that
a
one more time.
translation. There's
Let's hear
different
that one more time.
translations.
but they omitted it.
No.
Where do you
Yeah.
see Hanafish here? Where do you see soul in this text?
George, I don't think you understand it. When I read the ESV, I still understand that that person's being cut off because they're not circumcised.
You might understand that. But how about another individual? I'm
So what
asking just plainly, why is Hanafish is not in this text?
So what would someone miss if they read this? I don't understand.
That the soul dies.
But would someone know that if they cut off, the soul dies?
No,
Why not?
not if you read it. Not if you read it to this translation, because it says nothing about the soul. They plainly just removed it. Why would they remove a phrase, Hanafish, that all Hebrew texts have it? First, you try to defend it, saying that there's some Hebrew text that does have it, which that's not true. All of them have it. If there wasn't, there would have been a variation. But
some say the person.
Oh yeah. So this is what I wanted to show you, Lion Ryan. I wanted to show you how a variation works. So let me introduce you to the printed text of the Masoretic text right here that the ESV got it from. This is it. Most most translations get this from the Masoretic text. So let me show you. Here it is right here. Where we have Vera Arir, Sakar, Asher, Lo Yamol El Besar Oralato, Venerichita Henafish. Right there. Hanafish. If you see that where it has an A right next to oralato, you see there's a symbol at the bottom right there. And what that means is that's the Masoretic text in the Greek Septuagint. And what they're saying here, uvayom hash Mini, Hashmini, which is translated the eighth in the eighth day. That's brought up in Leviticus chapter 12, verse 3. But we see nothing with Hanafish. Nothing right here. It would have been there. There would be a symbol. There's no variation with the Greek Septuagint, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Targums, the Syriac text, the Coptic, the Latin, the Arabic. There's no variation. And this reminds me, weren't you the one who set the standard for the Watchtower? If they use a base text, we must stick to it. You remember when I first spoke to you regarding John chapter 14, verse 14? It seems you're singing in a different tune now, and you don't mean what you say or say what you mean. That's the problem you have with your videos. They contradict one another, and your go along, get along gang doesn't even call you out on it. They all appear to be disingenuous for not correcting you. Let's move on.
The person will be cut off. Some just word it differently, but
Exactly. The person, it could be translated that way too, but the ESV doesn't even have that.
Yeah, because that's not even the main point of the thing. The main thing is
It is the main point. It is the main point. The soul, the person will die. Why isn't it the soul, the person? Because that's what the soul is. The soul is a person. It's a character of the soul is the character of a person. It's not some type of living entity.
But it's not saying what you're saying. It says that's not what it means.
And what am I saying? What am I saying then?
You're saying the person died when actually they'll be just cut off from the people.
Okay, let's go by with that.
I even grant him that.
Why do they remove Hanafish?
It doesn't change. That's just the translation that they use. That's what that committee did. So it doesn't change the context of. It's not what the New World Translation does. They changed it. They changed the actual message of the verse. So
you don't have an answer.
No, that verse, God is talking about His covenant, and He's talking about the rules in His covenant and what needs to be done in the covenant. So if someone wants to be a part of that covenant, they will need to be circumcised. So if someone's not circumcised, they cannot be a part of that covenant. The practice was you be separated from the people. You don't see that being stoned just because it wasn't circumcised.
You don't know the Mosaic. Can you be put to death for breaking the Sabbath?
How does Sabbath connect to being circumcised?
Because you're minimizing your.
This is why. Let's bring up Exodus chapter 31, verse 14. You asked, what difference does it make? Okay, looks like it's not coming up. Well, I wanted to show you. See if I could bring it up on this one then. Exodus 31. I want to actually focus on the ESV. Let's focus on the ESV. Taking a little too long. This is how it's rendered then in the NASB. Therefore you are to keep the Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it must be put to death. Whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. I wanted to read it from the ESV, sticking to the Bible of your choice. So Exodus 31, verse 14. This is why it's important, Lion Ryan, because of the language. It's the same language. 31:14, and this is the way it reads in the ESV. Let me see. You shall keep the Sabbath because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Do you also see how inconsistent the ESV is? Here they will put soul in there where it should be, and in Genesis they don't. You see how inconsistent it is? That's why it's important, Ryan, because the language, it's speaking the same language in Exodus 31:14, in Genesis 17 verse 14. It's the same language. That's why it's important.
Putting this word cut off as if it's not death, which it is, that's what it says too.
Prove it.
With this is a painted picture based on Exodus chapter 24, verse 26. But let's just go ahead and read it. Now this is based on the ESV. So here's the scenario. The angel of Jehovah just spoke to Moses in Exodus chapter 3 to deliver a message to Pharaoh. And we read in Exodus chapter 4, starting with verse 21 through 26. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. If you refuse to let them go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah, which is Moses' wife, took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses. But it's translated also him. Touched his feet with it and said, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. It must then that she said, a bridegroom of blood, because of the circumcision. The pronouns him and you are disputed among scholars. If this is referring to Moses being put to death for not circumcising his son, as the Babylonian Talmud Nararim 31b-328 has a fable about Moses regarding this verse, or it's referring to Gershom, the firstborn of Moses, being put to death for not being circumcised. It can even be referring to Zipporah, Moses' wife, for not circumcising her son. At any rate, what caused this event is Moses' son not circumcised. And it wasn't until Moses' wife Zipporah circumcised Gershom that Jehovah didn't put Moses or Gershom or even Zipporah to death. So here's a perfect example where an Israelite would be venerit reta, shall be cut off, not being circumcised, as J.H. Hurt's translation stated. Let's go back and read what his translation had. His note here, cut off from his people, either through punishment at the hands of God. That's the experience we read Moses and or his son went through. So logically, if Jehovah's own selected prophet Moses wasn't exempt from circumcision that's brought out in Genesis chapter 17 verse 14, on what basis would Abraham, his son Ishmael, Amen, and his household, and the foreigners that were purchased are exempt from getting killed off if they weren't circumcised? If Jehovah didn't spare Moses and his son,